So in the world of the UFC, we have plenty of fan favorite fighters, some that exuberate charisma and confidence. Some others have extremely fun fighting styles and one punch KO power. My point is that the fact that the UFC has plenty of likable fighters on the roster. However, there are plenty of ones that have very unlikable personalities that the fans don't resonate with, where maybe their fighting style is boring or not entertaining. Maybe the personality is a bit cringe. Maybe they paint their nails every day, or maybe they even have a real relationship with their dog. Shout out to the puppy. If you know, you know. And as an MMA YouTuber, I think it's my job to go through a short list of 3 fighters who I deemed very unlikable in the UFC. This is not the most unlikable fighters. I'm sure there are others, but I think currently as it stands right now, I have 3 fighters that you could deem really unlikable. So if you guys enjoy this video, I might do a part 2 to it and add some more fighters on there. So let's not waste any more time and let's dive right into my top 3 most unlikable fighters in the UFC right now. So for my first fighter, this one might be a bit of a curveball that I'm throwing at you real quick here, but it's going to be Christian Rodriguez. Now, if you don't know who this guy is, and maybe you're a casual fan, this guy has had a really tough reputation lately of missing weight. It's been one of his biggest L's that he's taken recently. And I'll even be honest with you right now, Christian Rodriguez is not really a bad fighter whatsoever. Talent-wise, I think he's pretty good. And personality-wise, it might not be the best right now, but he's done nothing wrong with his personality, in my opinion. He might be a bit boring, but it's nothing that really could make you angry. But it's what he's done in the octagon that really makes him truly, I mean, not even unlikable, man. He can even be hateable at this point with how he's treated his career so far. And I think this guy is genuinely lazy. And so now you might be asking me, Kendall, what do you mean by lazy? He's an MMA fighter. Obviously, he has to work hard to make it to the UFC. How could this guy be lazy in the slightest? And so here's the deal. Here's the big shebang. Here's the big wallop here. This guy, again, cannot make weight to save his life. And it's not even the fact that he's just missing weight. It's the fact that he's also ruining prospects in the process by missing weight. And it's effectively cheating at this point. This guy fought in the Contender Series. He missed weight by 3 pounds in that matchup to beat his guy to even make it into the UFC. Then, he loses to Jonathan Pierce. It was his UFC debut. I won't hold him too hard to that. Then he beat Joshua Weems. It's whatever. He's legitimately good in the UFC. He was 1-1 at this point. He was kind of a good prospect to keep in mind here, but the fact that he eventually got booked versus Raul Rosas Jr. And if you know who Raul Rosas Jr. is, he was the 18-year-old prospect that the UFC had put a ton of hype behind. He was the next big thing. They were really promoting this guy like crazy. He was a legitimate prospect who could possibly have a future in the UFC because he is so young. He goes in there and he misses weight again. He misses weight by 2.5 pounds. Actually, not that bad, or 1.5 pounds technically, but he misses weight again by 1.5 pounds. Ends up beating Raul Rosas Jr. throughout a 3-round decision. You know what? It's whatever. That's strike 1. It's not that big of a deal in hindsight. I know it's Raul Rosas Jr. I know it was a prospect and he missed weight. C-Rod, I can't be too angry at you for missing weight one time in your UFC career, not counting the Contender Series. But then he goes out and guess who he fights next? He fights another up-and-coming prospect in Cameron Simon. And at that time, Simon was undefeated. His training partner or one of his main training buddies or just friends in life in general is the champion, Dricus du Plessis. Pretty much everybody who follows Dricus du Plessis knows of Cameron Simon. He has some real hype behind him. He's undefeated. He's a bantamweight prospect that people like. And then guess what happens in that fight? Or actually before that fight even happens. Christian Rodriguez ends up missing weight again, but not by 1.5 pounds, not by 2 pounds, 3 pounds, even 4 pounds. He misses weight by 5 pounds and ends up beating Simon over a 3-round decision. That's cheating. I hate to break it to you guys, but that is cheating to me if you're missing weight by 5+ pounds. And listen, I don't even know why Simon took the fight in the first place. This guy missed weight by 5 pounds. He's clearly not trying to make weight. He's clearly just too lazy to make weight. And when you look at Christian Rodriguez's physique, it's nothing like too crazy. It's not like this guy is juiced up, full of muscle, just bulging with veins everywhere. He's super lean, like Edson Barboza type physique. This guy has a very basic physique, a little bit of flab on him. His abs are still there, but he's not super huge. He has a very, I think, understandable, natural, basic physique that a bantamweight should have. Again, he's not this huge, humongous guy who is struggling to make weight. He just simply seems like he's just not really trying to make weight and not being like every other fighter who is, I mean, basically draining themselves to death. I think C-Rod legitimately just doesn't want to go through that process of making weight, and he just cuts it short and just says, you know what, screw it, F it. I'm going to go out there and just weigh in just to weigh in. If I miss weight, I miss weight. And at this point, he's ruining prospects while also missing weight. And it's just like, make weight, bro. Make weight. This is so dumb. How can you not make weight? I mean, basically 3 fights in your UFC career. Your first one was on the Contender Series, which you missed weight. You know what? Whatever. You missed weight. The UFC said, you know what? Come back, fight Jonathan Pierce on short notice. He did. He ends up losing that fight, whatever. He's still in the UFC. Then he fights Raul Rosas Jr., misses weight. Then he fights Simon, misses weight. And then he finally is forced to move up to featherweight, which is up a weight class at 145. And he ends up fighting Isaac Dogarian. Now, this fight happened recently, and he wins. And he made weight this time, which is actually saying something for Christian Rodriguez. But he makes weight up a weight class against Isaac Dogarian, who is, in his own right, another undefeated prospect. He's 6-0. He has potential at featherweight. And he made weight again. And he won the fight. I'll tell you those 2 things first. But he won by robbery. Let's be honest here. This guy was getting ragdolled in the first round. He pretty much got 10-8'd in the first round. Lost the second round pretty clearly. That could be a 10-9. And then he comes out in the third round. He pretty much just dominates Dogarian, reverses position, is in full mount for a little bit and running down ground and pound. Could have finished him at some point, but he didn't. He wins that fight by, what was the scorecard like? 28-27 in his favor. It was a rigged scorecard for him. He shouldn't have beat Isaac Dogarian. He ruins another prospect, and that to me is pretty much strike 3. He's out. Strike 1 was against Raul Rosas Jr. Strike 2 was against Cameron Simon, and now strike 3 is against Isaac Dogarian. If this guy just, he can't get a clean win, it feels like, and it makes him so unlikable because he's also ruining prospects as well as missing weight, and I can't fathom C-Rod winning in these fashions. It just makes him so unlikable, and yeah. And it really does suck, man, because C-Rod is actually a really good fighter. I think he's really talented. I think he has potential at featherweight now since he's not fighting at bantamweight anymore. But it's the fact that he couldn't make weight for all these fights, and then he goes out there and gets a robbery decision over another prospect. It just makes him so unlikable, and he doesn't really win cleanly in the UFC. And I mean, at this point, man, it's just like, what do you do with C-Rod? He's winning, but he's also missing weight. He has to go up a weight class, and now he wins by robbery, so he's like forced to stay in the UFC. Things are just weird with C-Rod. Things are just kind of awkward right now with him, so it is what it is. But C-Rod, you made Kendall MMA's video for being one of the most unlikable fighters in the UFC. I'm sorry, but you made a spot on this video for today. Moving on. Now, I might get some heat for this one. I might get some flack for this one, but this one makes the most sense currently right now and just historically. This dude, this guy, he's the current heavyweight champion in the UFC, and we know what he's done in the past. Jon Jones, there's no secret anymore. Jon Jones, I think, is the pinnacle of guys who are the most unlikable in any given sport. This dude is not a good person. I don't care what you say. Do not give me that excuse of, oh, he put his demons away. He had his demons. He's conquered them. Jon Jones, to me, is still a very despicable human being. I won't go into the whole pregnant lady car crash situation. That was forever ago. If you don't know anything about that, somehow, if you don't follow MMA, there's plenty of videos online detailing about the whole Jon Jones situation. But even after that, it came out that he pretty much effectively, his wife, that's about as good as I can give it to without getting demonetized. If you don't know about that situation, there's a whole police report. I might even pull it up for you real quick. I mean, this stuff is so crazy. I'll even read a little excerpt from an article that I just pulled up real quickly about this whole Jon Jones and his wife situation. But here it is. It pretty much says, according to the report, officers responded to a domestic disturbance at Caesar's Palace after a call stating that a white female adult, later identified as Jones's fiancée, Jessie Moses, was bleeding from her nose/mouth. After police arrived, they were informed that the suspect had just left the property and was picked up by another unit outside the hotel, where he identified himself as Jon Jones. Police then stated that former UFC champion resisted arrest as he was being taken into custody, and as Jones was being detained, he became irate and smashed his head into the front hood of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department patrol vehicle, leaving a medium-sized dent as well as chipping of some of the paint on the vehicle, the police report wrote. So we know this guy, Jon Jones, he's not a good person, bro. Like, his kids had to call the police on him. He pretty much battered his wife. He made her bloody. There was blood. Where it's more details in the police report that I won't really get into because I want to keep this video monetized. This guy is not a good human being, and still, and I don't know why people do this, but still they glorify this man as the GOAT. He gets away with it because he is the GOAT, and it's the most disturbing thing in my opinion. Jon Jones, again, he's a great MMA fighter. You can argue him to be the GOAT of the UFC. I don't necessarily agree with that, but the argument is still there. If you do count PEDs, he is the GOAT of the UFC. But the fact that this guy has had several altercations with women where they have ended up being hurt just doesn't make him a likable fighter in any sort of way. And listen, the thing about Jon Jones is the fact that people are very hypocritical when it comes to him, right? Just ignoring the whole wife and the whole women situation, the drugs, obviously, we'll ignore all of that, but we'll just talk about just his steroid uses. And the reason why I'm saying it's hypocritical is the fact that we crucified TJ Dillashaw. We set this man afire all the time for him popping for EPO. We discredit everything that TJ Dillashaw has done ever in his career because he popped for roids, but we don't hold Jon Jones to the same standard. And it's fair. If you dislike TJ Dillashaw for knowingly taking roids and still fighting, knowing it was in his system, that's fair. But have that same energy for Jon Jones. This guy has pretty much ruined divisions. He's ruined light heavyweight several times because he can't stay off the steroids. I don't care about posting picograms. It's so nuanced, the fact that this dude has had to be taking roids at some point. He popped against DC. He's a steroid-using cheat who also hurts women. This guy is the most unlikable guy in the UFC. I don't care if he's the GOAT. I don't care if he's good at fighting. This dude is not a good person, and he should be treated like that. And now to top it all off, to put the cherry on top, I know he's hurt right now. I know he tore his pec, but he's ducking Tom Aspinall. I hate to say it, bro, but this guy is ducking Tom Aspinall. He doesn't want that smoke with him. I made a whole video in the past, like I think, last week, I made a whole video detailing their whole interaction with each other. This guy is doing everything to avoid that fight with Tom Aspinall. He does not want that smoke. And at this point, man, he just is, I don't hate Jon Jones, but he's so unlikable, bro. I don't like him at all. I just simply don't. He's just not a good person. And everything he's done in the UFC up until now and just outside of the UFC, I think has made him a pretty shitty human being, if I'm being honest with you. And I think more people should hold him to that standard. But no, we still glaze him because guess what? He's the GOAT of MMA. Whatever. But you know what? It is what it is. Jon Jones gets away with it. He's still the GOAT, I guess. And yeah, whatever. He's not my GOAT, I'll tell you that. But moving on to the final fighter that I have on this little short list of most unlikable UFC fighters, we have the man, you know who it is. It's going to be Ian Garry. Like, it just has to be Ian Garry. Nobody likes Ian Garry. And you know what? I'll save the whole wife situation for later. This guy is the most Conor McGregor wannabe type guy that we've ever seen. He's cringe. His personality is very, very questionable and very, very cringe. His whole stealing of Conor McGregor lines and his post-fight fight wins, whatever, post-fight speeches. Dude, it's chill. It's cringe. Like, we know he's cringe. We know Ian Garry is not funny. We know that he's trying to be somebody else that he is clearly not. And Ian Garry, listen, the whole Jeff Neal, the whole Neil Magny situation where he pretty much tried to make Neil Magny out to be a child. You know, again, same reference here, like trying to stay monetized, but him basically calling Neil Magny a kid hitter is one of the more questionable things that he's done, even though we know for a fact that Neil Magny was not trying to portray that he hits his kids, but Ian Garry still ran with it anyways. Dude is, it seems like he's just a big virtue signaler who's trying to get any sort of attention, no matter even what it is. And I don't mind someone trying to get attention by negative means. I think if you're trying to be a successful UFC fighter, you should try to be promotable in any sort of way possible. But again, like, it just makes him cringe. It makes him very unlikable with the way that he's doing it. And I haven't even got into his whole wife situation. He just simply is a very unlikable fighter outside of that. Now, getting into his whole wife situation, him threatening Sean Strickland to sue him because he made comments about him and his wife, I think is pretty ridiculous. His whole Colby Covington call-out video was a full cesspool of cringe. Like, this guy cannot just not be cringy. It seems like Ian Garry just is He's in a bad situation, man. Like he just isn't cool. That's pretty much about it for Ian Gary. Like there's not much to him besides like the wife situation, which I've made videos in the past about. I mean, across YouTube, there's thousands of videos of Ian Gary and his whole wife situation. This guy is just simply unlikable as it can be. And listen, Ian Gary, he's a good fighter. Let's be real here. Ian Gary's not a bad fighter in the slightest. I think he's actually really talented. But it's the fact that the way he talks and the way he acts, and it seems like, dude, Ian Gary could be one of the biggest heels in the UFC. He could be a huge name just based on hate alone, but he doesn't even play into that. He doesn't even play into the heel role. If he came up to the UFC 27 press conference with Sean Strickland, Colby Covington, all those people, and he became the heel that he's supposed to be, he could be a star by hatred, which I don't mind that, man. Like the people, like MMA fans, like it's cool to dislike and hate somebody in the sport. It's cool to make them out to be the villain. It only brings more attention to the sport. It's the same thing in WWE where there's actual heel roles and they're trying to be the bad guy, and people love hating on the bad guy. It's fun to hate the bad guy because he's the bad guy. That's the whole point of every single movie that you watch. Hating the bad guy is fun. But Ian Gary doesn't even try to play into that heel role and try to be the bad guy. He wants to still be the good guy. So when he's trying to be that good guy while people still hate him, it just comes off as very ingenuine and very, very cringy. And it makes him, I mean, extremely unlikable. So yeah, that is my top 3 most unlikable fighters in the UFC right now in no particular order. This could be changed around in a later video if this does well. If you guys enjoyed this video, I might do a part 2 to it. So like, subscribe, hit the bell icon for notifications, leave a comment down below. I would appreciate that. But that pretty much concludes this video. Those were my 3 most unlikable fighters in the UFC. Peace.